To give you a quick tutorial on how to access your students' data in Unify for the quarter assessments. I'm going to include another link to a district-made video, but that one runs about 35 minutes, so I wanted to make a quick and shorter video to just go over the basics and highlight the best features that you can use in Unify. So the first thing you're going to want to do from your ClassLink homepage is click on Unify. And this is going to bring you to your Unify homepage. So before we begin, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go into demo mode. The reason I'm going to do this is because since I'm sharing my screen with others, I want to make sure that I'm protecting our students' information. So if you do eventually display this data for your students, you're going to want to make sure that you put yourself on demo mode. So to do this, you just click on your name, and then you're going to go ahead and select demo mode. So now it puts me in demo mode. If for some reason I want to take myself out of demo mode because I'm no longer sharing my screen with anybody, I just click on my name again, select demo mode, and now I'm out of demo mode. But for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and leave myself in demo mode, once again just to protect our students' information. So at this point, if we look at the top left of the screen, I see a tab that says Reports. So I'm going to go ahead and click on Reports. There's a couple great reports that you can run. The first is Baseball Card Report, and this is really good to just get a quick, fast, general overview of how your students performed on the assessment. But for a more in-depth look at how your students performed on the assessment, I would go ahead and recommend that you look on Student Item Analysis. So I'm going to go ahead and select Student Item Analysis. At this point, I have to select the test. So just for the sake of the example, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to select the U.S. History Quarter 1 assessment. So I'll scroll down and I'll click this one. So it brings up the assessment data, and at first it can be a little bit overwhelming. So I'm just going to start at the very top and then work my way down as I go over this with you. So when we look here where it says Item Attributes, this is where I can see all the different standards that were on the assessment. I can see how many questions were related to that standard, and I can get a general picture of how my students performed on that standard. Then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click on Achievement Bands. If you click on Achievement Bands, this is where you can see the breakdown of how the district determined cut scores for the assessment. So to put it simply, students who are not currently meeting the threshold are going to go ahead and be in the red. Students who are meeting the threshold are going to be in the yellow. And students who are meeting mastery are going to be in the green. So now I'm going to go back to Item Attributes. So I can go ahead and I can hover over the standard, and it's going to tell me exactly what the standard is. And then once again, I can scroll right here and it tells me how many questions were related to that standard. It tells me the percentage of students that were in the red, yellow, and green for that standard. And here we have the ability to manipulate it a little bit. So right now, I've selected green. So it's telling me the percentage of students that met mastery for that standard. But maybe I don't want to see the green. Maybe I want to see the red. So if I click on the green, it's now everything's at 0, and that's because I have no color selected. So if you notice in the red and the yellow and the green, you see a little white square. So that means that it's not selected. So if I click on red, now all of a sudden I've had numbers populate. So now I'm looking at the percentage of the kids who fell in the red for each standard. Maybe I want to look at red and yellow together. So now I see the numbers change again. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back to green. So I uncheck the yellow and I uncheck the red, and I go ahead and I click on the green. So if I go all the way to the right, it shows me how my students performed compared to the district. Yours may look a little different than mine. Yours might show you your students compared to the school compared to the district. So I don't see that. I just see our student population compared to the district. So a really neat feature, if I go ahead and I click on any standard, so for example, I'm going to click on this first standard, you're going to notice the graph to the far right is going to change. So I click on this, and I notice that the graph has changed. So it's showing me how my students performed on that standard compared to the district. Now, once I'm done viewing this standard, I want to make sure that I uncheck it, and I see that the graph goes back. So perhaps I want to select the second standard. I noticed that I had a lot of kids miss that question. So when I click on the second standard, I see that my kids were pretty on par with the district with that one. So once again, I can go ahead and I can uncheck that. So once again, when I go down here, I see that I have the standard selected. If I wanted to, I could click depth of knowledge, and it breaks it down by level 1, 2, and 3 questions. So I can see that most questions on the assessment fell in the level 2 range. And question interaction tells me what type of question it was. So I see that of the 27 questions, all of them were multiple choice. So now the last part I want to show you. If I scroll all the way down, now I start to see my students. And keep in mind that we're in demo mode. That's why you have all these pound signs rather than student names. So if I hover over each question, so this is question 1 of the assessment, it tells me the standard, it tells me the level of the question. But then I have this little play button. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to click this play button. And what it does is it actually brings up the question that was on the assessment. And a really cool feature of this is if you did have it projected in your classroom, you can actually interact with it. So perhaps I review this question with my students, and then the students decide that the correct answer was A. So we go ahead and we click it. Well, if you notice at the bottom, the score says 0 out of 1. So what that's telling me is that our guess on that question was incorrect. So then maybe we decide that it was B. So when I click on B, I notice that now my score is 1 out of 1. So it's showing me that we did select the correct response. So that's a cool interactive feature that you could use with your students when you're reviewing the data. So I'm going to go ahead and close out of that. And the last feature that I want to show you, when you look down here where it says the question number, so 1, 2, 3, you notice right next to it there's this little circle kind of with like a little sideways lightning bolt in it. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And what happens at the very top, if I scroll up a little bit, it tells me the breakdown of my students and how they chose, or in what answer they chose. So our students are going to be the solid color, and the district is going to be this checkered design. But now if I go to question number 4, because I see that I had a lower percentage of students get that correct, so I'm going to click on that. And I noticed that B was the correct answer, but a lot of students thought it was D. So that might be a question that we want to discuss, see why they thought it was D instead of B. So that's just a really neat feature. And once again, it compares how your kids did compared to the district. So that's pretty much a general overview of the features of student item analysis in Unify. If you have any questions, feel free to seek me out. And once again, I'm going to include the link to the district-made video, which goes over the assessment data tools in here much more in depth. So feel free to check that out if you have time. So thanks for watching.